This podcast discusses a non-stop, thrilling adventure fantasy series set in the brutal and competitive world of a military college for dragon riders, which includes potential spoilers for all published material. This episode includes elements regarding war, death, combat, consent, bodily fluids, and explicit language. Listeners who may be sensitive to these elements, cross the parapet at your own risk and prepare to enter the Wing Raiders. We have left off with Professor Kaori bringing up the image of Tarn. So, Cassie, if you want to continue along in our recap.
So, there hasn't been a black dragon born in the last century. So that makes...
Yes, this is something I want to hit on really quick. Because I mentioned in the first part of our recording that since the revolution became public, there was an uptick in the hatching of dragons. Mm-hmm. And so what I will mention is I want to say Iron Flame, Tarn lets loose that 3 more black-scaled dragons have recently hatched because he's trying to justify why Andarna is black-scaled. Mm-hmm. But we find out here that it's been well over a century since Tarn's birth, or Tarn's hatching. So the idea that there's, and Coda is a decent bit older than Tarn. Mm-hmm. So there's this concept of, there were not a lot of black dragons, and all of a sudden, there be 5. 6 if you count Andarna, which no one should.
They did at the time, and we forgive them.
But still.
So, going off of this, there hasn't been one born in the last century. I suppose that could very well mean it wasn't this century, but last century, so that's like a 100-year time frame. Mm-hmm. But there could also be an argument that a century ago, 100 years ago, a black dragon was born. Tarn is a little over 100, so there potentially could have been another black dragon that has since died. More than likely not, but I just, anytime that there's a little bit vagueness of the language, I'm like, is Rebecca trying to sneak something by us here? Is this something that means something? Most likely, probably not, but just something that I found.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, you gotta parse the words. I'm gonna go with, what is it, whose razor? It's Occam's razor, there we go.
Yeah.
That the simple answer is Tarn is that dragon that was born 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes the most sense to me at the moment.
One more thing, though, about him being a little over 100. He's only had 1 rider, and yet he is revered as a battle dragon among their kind. So, he is either older than they think, and he, in the dragon sphere, has had multiple riders, or possibly, do dragons have their own wars?
Well, or think about how many times we find out about unbonded dragons flying out with the riot to defend where they're positioned, whichever position we're trying to defend. And so there could be an easy argument to be made here that Tarn chose to remain unbonded because Sigale was the one that was bonding repeatedly, and that he was just deploying with Sigale wherever they ended up sending her with her rider. And
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
He is a general among dragons. He got that reputation not by having a rider on his back, but by commanding even those that had the rider on their back.
Okay, I get that. So do you think that Scale, then, when Tarn had bonded Naolin, do you think that she was taking a break and waiting for Xaden? Or taking a break for whatever reason? She might not have had the, foresight of knowing it would be Xaden?
Well, you think about it, this was before the revolution took place. It was right before the revolution took place. I'm not sure. That is a fantastic question. What brought Tarn to the concept of, I'm going to bond Naolin? And I guess if there is one thing that I really would like to dig into deeper, it's what we don't know about Naolin still.
It's everything, basically.
Oh my gosh, there's so much we don't know about him, and we're going to get to that in the next page.
Okay, so black dragons, we've talked about the red ones having, was it the red ones that had the temper, and the blues are
ruthless and intimidating.
Yeah. So the black ones are the most cunning. You do not outsmart a black dragon.
They're also the smartest and the most discerning.
Smartest, most discerning. I was going to say, technically the most cunning goes to the greens, but that's just because their cunning is bolstered by their even-temperedness. Black dragons are more like the active
This
cunning.
literally says that the black ones are the most cunning. The green ones are like very logical and like intelligent, but it specifically says here that the black dragons are the most cunning.
I'm looking.
That's from Kaori's mouth.
That is true. That is a human's perspective. But they attribute him and Naolin to winning the rebellion.
Oh, how about I get to the right page?
That would help.
Just a little.
They talk about, or Jack jumps in again because he wants the black one. Obviously, he wants the best of the best so that he can be the best in order to, I don't know, win, either just because he's selfish or to win them over to the venin side, depending on your stance on that theory.
Other quick thing about Terran, now that we're meeting him and learning about him, he's the only dragon that I can think of that has a morning star tail.
Okay. I need to Google really quick.
And part of me wonders if that's like size dependent.
It might be.
Part of me has always wondered if like the human classification for the various tails of dragons is actually accurate.
Why? Like,
Because it's so... As a queer person who has spent a lifetime trying to understand the buckets that keep being used to define people, but recognizing that there be spectrums that spill out of those buckets, I have this weird idea that, like, a tail is a personal choice, but once you choose to go into the, like, I'm going to have a battle tail rather than a feather tail, I kind of wonder how, like, no two tails are identical. I think it's like a fingerprint in the fact that it's very personalized off of the dragon. And so what we consider to be a club tail is just a tail that had a lot of meat, but not a lot of, like, armor or, like, piercing scale or anything like that. Versus a morning star tail is a tail that both has a lot of meat on it so that it swings like a club, but also has all of the piercing scale armament. And then we have, like, dagger tails and sword tails, which are just piercing elements, but of different varieties. And so I kind of have this weird idea that, like, much like we can look at fingerprints and identify broad traits that tend to appear in multiple people, like swirls or arches or this, that, or everything else, the actual final combination is probably as unique as the dragon itself.
I have mixed feelings about this because on one hand, every phenotype, like, of any individual is going to be unique to a degree. So I don't know, that like doesn't feel like it defies classification necessarily.
I know.
I mean, the fact that they do have a choice, though,
Does it say they have a choice?
Yes, because Andarna specifically chose to have a scorpion tail instead of remaining a feather tail, as all the other Irids do.
Okay, but is there not, like, do you choose between feather tail and a, like, adult tail, or do you choose specifically what you want instead of a feather tail?
The implication that the dragons have given us is that you get to choose the tail. And because, like, when Violet finds Andarna after she's become huge, she makes a comment of, like, I swear to God, if I see a morning star tail on the back of this dragon, we're gonna have words. She, like, starts to chew out Taryn for keeping more secrets from her, and oh my God, Andarna's your child. And he makes a comment of choice of tail is entirely individual or something like that. But now if we're trying to apply that to my theory, I would argue that we're making the semantic difference between individuality by choice or individuality by fate. Like,
yeah, so if they're choosing, then it's definitely not like a genetic breeding thing. Like, you can't use the tail to, like, follow, like, a species or a family tree of dragons.
Yeah, I don't think you can, no.
No, I don't think that that's the case at all. In fact, I think that there is going to be a massive amount of variety across lines, or across a single line. What I'm saying is it's much like how Violet has to find daggers that fit her size, the smaller daggers. when a dragon goes into that choice, they end up picking a tail structure, or a tail structure ends up emerging that is what best suits them. Whether it's like a very intentional, they sat down and designed their tail in their brain before it happened, or it's just like, I can line up 5 different dagger tails, and while yes, they generally have this shape, each one is as unique as the one that came before it. I don't know. I feel like we're going to find something out about tails that it is meaningful to the individuality of the dragon. And like, while it's a choice, it's not entirely a practical Build-A-Bear choice.
From my Googling, Terran is the only morning star tail that we know of.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that you're right about that because the morning star tail is a different color of word than the dagger tail or scorpion tail or club tail, and I don't remember that color of word popping up in my brain later on.
We know that it's a rarity among dragons because when Terran uses his tail to break the boulder that's falling on them in Iron Flame when they're going up the cliff, Sloane asks if it was a club tail, and she has to correct Sloane and be like, no, that is definitely a Morningstar tail, which like is known about but not exactly commonly seen, is my impression.
Okay, back to the paragraph. So, as I said, we've got, Jack being all interested, and Professor Kaori has to shut him down and be like, you don't approach this guy.
Because
and also
he's
you
not even
can't.
bonding.
Because, he's not even presenting himself as an option since the last and only time that he bonded before. So the only way that you'd ever even get close to him is if you're in the Veil, which is where all the eggs are. So, like, you're definitely not getting in there, and if you did, you'd be toast immediately. Well, you'd be toast before you got there, is basically what he says.
Yes. 2 things. First, I find it really interesting that Kaori doesn't mention, especially since he had Scale Up and then Terran immediately after, doesn't mention that they are a mated pair, which is known. That's not just something that we find out later.
Do you think it's because this lesson is, like, in theory, his lesson plan is supposed to be about the kinds of dragons and who's available, and not actually diving deep into all of the, like, dragon...
Sure, but I mean, he's giving them a rundown about Terran, about black dragons in general, and being, this is all about blacks, even though the black isn't available. So I just found that interesting. I think that's just another thing that narrative-wise, it's more of a little shock to the system when you find that out after she bonds Terran. Second, right after Kaori saying that you will be incinerated before you ever got through the gorge, we get mention of a marked
I was going to ask you if
cadet.
You guys had any guess of who this was.
I don't, and I wanted to ask too. So a pale redhead across the circle for me shifts in her seat and tugs her sleeve down to cover her rebellion relic. And I just thought this was such an odd call out. So first of all, I'm wondering, do we know who this is? And especially because it's right after a mention of going into the Veil and being incinerated, I'm like, is this person just nervous about being incinerated by dragons? Do they have information that they are feeling nervous about? Like, this is such a weird detail that we're talking about a marked one who we don't know that is having a
Because this definitely made it sound like, like she's, by trying to cover her relic, she's like trying to hide, like draw attention away from herself, hide something that connects her to this statement about Tarn's previous rider Naolin being killed during the uprising and being in the Veil. Was there an attempt to get to the Veil?
Does she know Brennan?
No, I think you guys are reading into this way too hard here, and so I'm gonna come at you with Occam's razor. This is a first-year cadet, which means that she was 13 when she watched her parents being incinerated by dragonfire. And I put this forward by saying Xaden was 15 and she's 2 years after him. She's a poor 13-year-old that
Yes,
spent
so
the
she's just
last.
remembering the dragon
Yeah.
fire being used to create her own relic.
And so every time that she hears incinerated by dragon, she is only thinking about this core traumatizing memory of being 13 years old and watching your parents incinerated as form of execution. And so yeah, I think that all you're seeing here is the subconscious trauma manifesting as I don't want to be seen as someone who deserves to be incinerated by a dragon. Hide anything that might point people in the opposite direction.
Okay. Agreed. However, timeline wise, I thought the rebellion ended 5 years
Zayden
ago.
was 20 years
He's
old.
22 or 23 because they are conscripted
I
at 20.
swear that we found out that Zayden was 15 when the rebellion ended.
I thought he was 17. He was like just old enough to be a kid still.
Give me a second. Trusty Google. We're both wrong, and it's the statistician's favorite answer. It's right in the middle. He was 16 years old when he was forced to witness the Kaldir execution of the rebellion's leadership. He was 15
Okay,
when his
yeah.
dad started the rebellion.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, so the Tirish rebellion ended 6 years prior to the start of Fourth Wing. Okay. So really, it was only a year.
Yeah.
That feels like, I mean, Fen must have been doing a lot of stuff, like, secretly leading
Oh,
up to that, because we know in Iron Flame, like, how many connections that Xaden has, and his dad was definitely scheming and trying to probably make this a successful revolution rather than just a rebellion that got
oh,
squashed
and
in a
like we
year.
totally know he did because even in Navarre's own record of the insurrection, and I'm looking on it right now, they tell us that like his first act of treason was seeking out allies quietly, including the formation of a partnership with what's his name out of Kaldir.
Oh, don't ask me names.
Not Kaldir. Not Kaldir. Cat's uncle. Cat's
Yes,
That
uncle.
guy.
and Krovla.
The Viscount.
Tecarus?
Viscount Takaris.
Okay, well, now that we now that we've decided how much that line means. Rebecca continues to use Jack here to ask all of the stupid questions, such as you should just ask him to bond again, as if that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie is like, nope, but we're going to talk about the other single black dragon now, which is Coda, General Malgan's dragon, who is the one that did all of these incinerations of the rebellious leaders and the marking of the children.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we...
I found it. I found the epigraph here. It is from Iron Flame, Chapter 40. Colonel Felix Geralt, the Tirish rebellion of forbidden history. His first true action of rebellion was to seek allies, the first of which was Viscount Takarish of the Peromish province of Krovla. Sorry. I find pride in finally finding things in the sorting system I created.
We learned that Coda is a swordtail and the eldest of the den, which if there's only two blacks, one of them has to be the oldest.
By logic's reasoning, either one of them is the oldest or they are identically aged.
So Jack is still trying to figure out, like, how could he benefit if he did bond a black? Which signet would Tarn be able to gift their new bonded rider? And Carrier is like, again, that's not how it works. They don't just give you a signet, they don't just make you super powerful. Signets are the result of the unique chemistry between rider and dragon, and usually say more about the rider than the dragon. The stronger the bond and the more powerful the dragon, the stronger the signet. So we learned that Naolin's signet was siphoning, which works as being able to absorb power from various sources, other dragons, other riders, and then they can use it or distribute it, which we know this is the same power that Sloane gets later. I was wondering if this power makes channeling from the ground easier, because the power is about absorbing power from different sources.
Yeah, I feel like siphons would be especially prone to turning venin.
It does seem like something they'd have to be aware of and like cognitive of when they're siphoning. Part of me also wonders because, like, if you're a siphon, the only use you have for energy is just to siphon more power. But yet it says they can absorb power and then use it.
Yeah, how, like with minor magic, I guess?
Maybe, or like, so part of me
Like,
is
use
now
it how?
wondering if, like, if I siphon power from Brennan, does that mean that I become a healer? But if I siphon powers from
Like, does it come
Dane, I
tinged?
become retrocognition reader?
I mean, the way that we see Sloane using her siphon power both in Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, it is just seeming like raw
Yeah.
power to then use how it needs to be used. So, like, when she's taking Dane's power and giving it to Brennan, it's just amplifying his healing, where he's not burning out and is able to heal a more dramatic wound than he could without extra
So I have a
power.
thought about this, but we need to get to the next paragraph first because I feel like
Okay, but wait, before we do that, I actually have quite a few things to talk about um, with just this first mention of Naolin and siphoning and all of that good stuff. So,
Okay, does it have to do with Brennan though?
um, all of them but one.
So
So,
we're gonna save all of the Brennan ones for
okay,
like 2
okay,
minutes from now.
Yeah, there's a
yes.
paragraph she's trying. I see what Cassie's trying to do. Let her do it.
So I am just fundamentally, besides the fact of, I guess it would be being bonded to a dragon, what is the difference between having a signet of siphoning and being a venin? Is it just that the dragon is putting essentially a hard limit on how much you can absorb, on how much power you can siphon off and redistribute? Because that is how venins work, is that they
So,
take.
yeah, let's think about this in terms of. You're going to love this one, but I have absolute confidence that this is going to be the framework by which she is going to lead this conversation in the later books. Let's consider this in the framework of consent.
Ooh, okay.
Does the ground consent to have its energy taken?
Well, can the ground consent at all?
This is a valid question, but does the ground consent? If
I
it
guess
can't consent at
no.
all, then it can't consent, right? But a dragon chooses to give this power to their rider.
Okay.
And so my interpretation is, so long as it's energy being wielded through the dragon's signet, it's the dragon that's taken responsibility for the power that's being flowed. And so there's, yeah. Obviously, Sloane doesn't become a venin the second she siphons Violet's power.
Yes.
Think to the cave when she manifested. I know there was a lot going on at that time. There
Gosh,
was a dragon fighting another dragon.
I'm excited to reread that part because I'm just, yeah, so much happens in that chapter. I'm like, what even goes on?
I think that we're going to find that the conversation about what is acceptable uses of energy and what isn't acceptable uses of energy is kind of derived around the consent to have access to that energy. Venin do not have consent to have access to the power that they have access to.
They just take it.
Riders
Which
and
I do
flyers
think they say at some point that you just take. I can't remember who.
Yeah, you just take.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the part with all of the other thoughts that we are collectively having. So, what could kill
Yes.
this kind of rider that has the siphoning power? Well, first we have Gary glancing at Violet for a second, so we know she's relevant to the answer. He tried to revive a fallen rider, which, quote, which didn't work because there's no signet capable of resurrection, and depleted himself in the process. So, I guess in the framework they're trying to pitch here, they're saying he used whatever energy or whatever magic he was able to access and basically burned himself out trying to resurrect Brennan. So I have a couple thoughts and questions here.
Same.
Would this have worked because he was giving the magic to Brennan and Brennan was healing himself? Like, is that how that was supposed to work? Is that how it did?
But the whole story is called into question because Brennan never died.
Right, so I'm wondering, like, did he...
But he almost
did.
did.
Actually
He
almost
did.
die. So, how did he not die? And we know he's got a mark on him. So, like, did the rune have
Life
something
force,
to do with
life
it? Did he,
power?
like, scratch a rune in and then pump power into it and that brought Brennan back?
Okay, I need to know more information about this mark on Brennan because to me it reads more of this kind of similar mark that comes from when a venin draws. So there's obviously this whole theory that Naolin turns venin, and I think if anything, it would be to save
Mm-hmm.
Brennan, because he would be burning out trying to get enough
Yeah, this is where my
energy
thought
to
of
save
like
Brennan.
him being a siphon, like if he's burning out, he's using up Terran's power. Terran's probably trying to cut him off. If the siphon
Hmm.
is has the easiest time turning venin, like he could just turn around, put his hand to the ground, and start siphoning from the ground instead to get more of that power that he's struggling to have access to. That's my.
Well, he would just need to break basically the hold of Tarn because he's already taking energy probably from the ground. Because he can take it from wherever. There's just like a hard stop limit because he's bonded to a dragon where he would burn out, that he can't just do that unchecked.
Does Sloane ever get to just take power from the ground though?
It says earlier with Kaori saying that
It just says,
they can absorb power from various sources, other dragons, other riders, and then use it or
but
redistribute
he
it.
never
So
says the
anything that
ground.
has power, but anything that has power, Venin are able to take power from the ground because there is inherent power that lies in the ground. So I would assume that siphons could do that
But
too.
it's just like the generic radiated power that falls to the ground. And I would assume that that's highly discouraged of siphons to do. I have information. So from Brennan's mouth at the beginning of Iron Flame, he tells us Naelin didn't fail. It cost him everything.
Hmm.
He woke up on a cliffside not far from here, from Orisha.
Hmm.
His dragon had been wounded, he was alive, and there were other dragons that saved him, hid him, and brought him to the city. And that's all we really get out of Brennan when it comes to Naolin. Because Naolin is as tight-lipped, or when Brennan is as tight-lipped about Naolin as fucking Taryn is.
Okay. Do we? I need to hear what it says about the mark on his hand, because I know that a lot of people are saying like it's a rune. I don't know if it does it ever say that it is a rune, or Violet's just like, oh, it reminds me of a rune.
It's the description that we get from Violet's perspective every single time it gets mentioned is it's this rune-shaped scar on his palm. And he constantly rubs at it and fidgets with it in front of Violet whenever they're talking about, especially whenever they're talking about Venin or his past, or like there's a couple of key moments, and this is something we'll have to catalog as we come across them. But every time it comes up that he's like rubbing it, we should write down what the conversation is at the time,
Okay.
because that's going to give us our clue to what's setting him off to think about that room. But you're right. I've heard everything from it's the place where the siphoned power got pushed into him. It's a place where Naolin scarred him. It's the scar. It's the mark that Naolin put into him to bring him back, the same way that they put ruined rocks into wyvern to keep them alive. And so,
Mm.
That was
y'all,
part of
I
my
haven't heard,
thought.
and up to like it could be a communication rune that he has to constantly have contact with the love of his life, because I will die on this
I was
hill.
gonna ask.
They were more than
They're
best
lovers.
friends.
I was
They're
gonna say,
100% lovers.
yeah.
I will die on that hill. They are more than best friends.
Because Kaori is just like, oh, he just attempted to revive a fallen rider, and I was like, who in these books do you give your life to save? The love of your life. Like there's,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably why Brennan is being
Or
so,
family in some
or family,
cases.
but that's probably why Brennan's being so cagey about all of this, because either Naolin died saving him by using his own life force, or he turned venin. And
Hmm.
that, like, the word everything, like, it cost everything is very conveniently vague there.
Which we'll get to it when we get to
Yes.
it.
But I would say, yeah, becoming venin costs more than dying in many ways.
But everything could include his soul.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So from this conversation, I gathered that we're all on the train that Naolin is a venin.
I feel like, well, that's got to be why Tarn is so, like, upset about Zayden turning.
But that implies that Taryn had the ability to break the bond with Naolin before we ever learned about that ability. And you would think that if dragons had that ability, at some point they would have used it and humans would be aware of it.
Unless
Yes,
it's like a
but
last
isn't there a
resort
moment?
type thing. Like, they don't just do that, like, casually.
I thought that there was a moment in Onyx Storm when think it's Theophany talking to Violet saying like you can choose to bring your dragon with you. So it seems like maybe like the loss of a soul could like nullify the bond maybe, because there's also a point where Zayden's like, are you going to forsake me now? Like, so I don't know.
Well, but Zayden knew that Andarna had broken the bond, so he had some idea that maybe
Sure.
this was something Sigale could do. But also, like, you could make an argument that the bond was just naturally broken by something that had never been a possibility before. We know that at the 3-day mark, distance from your dragon becomes painful to the rider. And we know that a rider cannot live without their dragon, period, the end. Like, you can't just walk away from your dragon and be on the other side of the continent for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It will kill you. So we could make an argument that because Naolin had become a venin, he was able to keep himself alive and prevent that loss of the connection with Taryn from hurting him, and just got far enough away that the bond faded to nothing.
Or we know that Venin are capable of doing greater magic.
Weird shit.
Maybe becoming a Venin, you can then use your powers to break bonds,
Which is
or at least your own bond.
another reason to discourage that.
I could see that too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, did we make it to the end of this paragraph, Cassie? No, I don't think we proceeded to this paragraph yet.
We've gotten through the one about him burning out and dying.
Yeah. Okay.
So then Violet caught that glance that Professor Carey sent her way, and so then she confronts him after class and is like, oh, that was Brennan, the one that Naolin died trying to save. And he confirms that. She asks why. This is again where it's like, well, because they cared about each other a lot.
Well, that's not what he says, though. He says, well, being a Sorengale, it was to
Right.
keep your mom
So-
either happy or, to get a favor from her because they're scared of her. And I'm like, that's a bullshit reason. That's a bullshit reason.
Yeah, that's me saying they cared about each other a lot, not Carey.
Okay.
Carey is like, well, yeah, Brennan was a Sorengale. You either want to keep Mama Sorengale's favor or you want to avoid her wrath. And Naolin desired both of those things. But
Yeah, which is so silly because you would think that Mama Sorengale, like, she wouldn't be expecting someone to like revive her child if that is like within the framework.
yeah,
of,
this
like...
just feels like such a cop-out answer.
Okay, so let me throw a spin on this here. Mama Sorengale has gotten a rumor through the command chain that her husband has taken up a relationship with another officer that is in service with him. Finds out that they are on deployment together. No. Let's just presume that Mama Sorengale found out about Naolin and Brennan.
I thought you said that she found out about her husband.
Okay, you just said husband.
You meant
I
to
did
say
not.
son.
You definitely
I
said
don't think
husband.
Okay.
I was like,
Okay.
wait, why are we talking about Daddy Sorengale?
What do you mean he's cheating?
No, okay, so she finds out about Brennan and Naolin through the command structure, through the Dragon Rider...
Grapevine?
Grapevine.
Yeah, grapevine or scuttlebutt was the word that was also coming to
A
mind.
scuttlebutt is a drinking fountain.
And then she finds out, like, let's just even presume that she approved of it to a certain extent and, like, made certain actions to ensure that they stayed on the same deployment together and were not separated by orders. War starts up and is happening and going on, and her son and this man go into battle. She knows Naolin's a siphon. She knows her son's a healer. And what would you do if you were the mother of the child who could have healed himself if his damn boyfriend would have just siphoned more power into him? And so there's also an argument to be made that, like, if he had come back without Brennan, would she have ever forgiven him?
Oh,
like,
probably
you think
not.
that because of her being able to put those pieces together, illegal as they may be, she would still hold a grudge against him, and he would therefore feel an even heavier weight from her.
Well, or even just, like, why didn't you use your siphoning? Like, there's a certain level of irrationality that comes out of grief that turns into blame to the person that didn't save them. We see it with doctors, we see it with first responders.
And we do know that her children being alive is one of the only things she cares about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that would happen, but I just... not to the point where that would be his reason for trying to save Brennan.
No, I also agree with a certain extent of, like, he himself would have done anything to save the man.
Yeah. Carrie's using this conversation as sort of a pep talk for Violet, saying, like, once you make it out of here, your name will start being a reason for people to keep you alive instead of kill you. And also, it's it can be hard for a rider with a really strong signet to recognize their limits. And I was like, oh, you mean like this problem Violet's gonna have for the rest of the series?
Yes.
Or, like, yeah, no, you take this and just completely flip it on the other end here. Everyone may try to keep her alive because she's a Sorrengail, but because she's a Sorrengail, she actually goes out of her way to put herself in some of the deadliest situations of people around her. And also, like, knowing the edge of one's limit in power, think about at the end of Onyx Storm. And I this thought occurred to me after we had a previous recording session, because I keep trying to go on about the evolution and strengthening of signets. We see a very, very interesting progression in Violet in 1 year's time. Basically, like 15 months, she goes from being able to bring lightning down without any aim, accuracy, or like control, to being able to branch out dozens of finely precisioned branches and take out multiple targets in the air, even if it is the good old strike and pray method. And so, like, this all is kind of interesting because it's like Kaori is actually capable of seeing into Violet and seeing, you're gonna struggle with this. You're gonna just try to throw yourself into the danger zone, and you're gonna do anything in your power to keep the people safe, even if it means throwing yourself on the pyre.
One thing that Kaori says here that I find very thought-provoking. After all, bonding makes you a writer, but resurrecting someone from the dead, now that makes you a god. I somehow don't think that Malik takes kindly to a mortal treading on his territory.
I was also just gonna read that.
Sorry, Cassie.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I don't know where to go with this exactly, other than like either Brennan wasn't all the way dead, or the venin just have way more complex powers than we understand.
Well, or it's just really leaning into the concept of, once Brennan had died, there was nothing that Naolin could have done to bring him back. Like, once a soul, at least in Kaori's eyes, once a soul crosses the veil, nothing lets it come back. Keep that in mind.
But we don't know that for sure.
So are you saying Malik wanted Brennan to stay alive?
I'm saying that Brennan didn't actually cross the veil.
Yeah, that's...
I don't know. I still think that Venin could resurrect.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an opinion
Now
yet
that you mention
on
it,
whether I think on whether I think he was mostly dead or truly dead.
He's just mostly dead. I just showed Noah Princess Bride a couple weeks ago. Oh.
See, what Naolin actually did is he took a chocolate-covered ball of medicine, so that, but he had to double check if Brennan was staying alive for true love first.
He goes, true love. John, you're looking at us very confused.
I figured out what you guys were talking about finally. Oh my god.
Princess Bride. No, yeah, I showed that to Noah for the first time, and Labyrinth with David Bowie, which were two of my favorite movies growing up, and he was in and out. So maybe when he's a little bit older, I can fully convert
It's
him.
gotta be a repeat watch. That's one of the only movies that I'm pretty willing to just watch.
So good.
Also, don't forget to show him the Never-Ending Story. That is also a fun one.
I never saw the Never-Ending Story.
It's actually pretty cute.
I saw it once when I was a kid, so I have a very poor recollection of it.
It blurs the lines of the fourth wall very, very funny ways. But let's pivot back here really quick. If we take the idea that Venin can revive people and walk it forward a little bit, does that mean that Xaden...
Are you talking to talk about Liam?
Nope.
Okay, good.
Let's
I don't like that theory.
Let me get the theory out, then you
Sorry.
can shit on it, okay?
I'm not shitting on it.
Jesus, okay.
I'm not. I'm just saying that I was hoping you weren't going to talk about Liam.
No, we'll save that argument for another day. No, so
Okay, good.
let's presume for a second that Zayden actually did manage to kill Berwyn at the Battle of
Hmm.
Basgiath, and another venin brought Berwyn back to the Barrens, and the venin revived Berwyn to sick him on
Mm.
Zayden again.
Because yeah, he was like, I could have sworn I killed that guy.
Yeah, and he, like makes a comment of apparently he is unkillable. Maybe it's not that he's unkillable. Maybe it's just it's really hard to get that killing to stick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
and then I mean, then we get into motherfucking Jack Barlow. Because I just put my book down. Because I'm like, okay, hold on.
Because nothing can
Because
kill him either.
nothing could kill him either. So there is the question. Did he die and another venin revived him? Or is it something where to kill a venin, you have to be so like death shot right away? Because if you do something where it's like, I'm slowly dying because I fell, I can now siphon this power enough to keep me alive.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Well,
being
or
in
And
contact with
maybe
so
the earth.
with Berlin, he fell. Yeah.
yeah, I think that Jack Barlow definitely kept himself alive by channeling. I also would argue that maybe it's easier to bring a venin back to life because again, they killed their
No
soul.
soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so technically they're not taking anything back from Malik anyway. We commend souls to Malik.
Not bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that if we really want to get into it, we can have the discussion of are the gods even real or is it a metaphor? But I feel like that's gotta be for a different
I've
conversation.
got some thoughts about, or maybe not thoughts, but I've got some comments about that in my next chapter.
Okay.
Dune is a wrathful goddess, and her blade still manages to kill Theophany. Dead kill, because bitch desiccates.
Yes, but I feel like there could be grounded in the world.
Magic mumbo
Yes,
jumbo.
that's not necessarily. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence about a lot of
This is gonna
things.
be a great discussion.
I feel like John's getting mad at us.
I was gonna say, yeah, no, I'm not, I'm just like, ah. Anyway, what paragraph are we on again?
Well, I'm ready to go to the next page.
Oh, let's, no,
Yes, Kaori's talking about teaching her siblings.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I was gonna say next page, I thought you were gonna move on to the next scene. No, never
Not
mind.
quite. But just it's the conclusion of this conversation with Mira, or not with Mira, with Violet, where he's talking about how he already taught Brennan and Mira, and they're both like, really amazing writers, but he thinks that she's smarter than both of them, which is, I think, maybe the first explicit praise that she gets. She still doesn't really believe it here.
I I feel like Rhiannon has to have given her
From an
praise
authority
of
figure,
some.
though.
Okay, from the generation above her, yes,
Yeah.
this is the first praise.
She's not only receiving praise from an authority figure, but he's telling her that not only that she's actually superior to her siblings in some
Yes,
respect,
like you
where she's
belong here. You deserve to
where
be
she's
here.
always gotten the message before that she's like three of three. She's like the lowest, the bottom is nothing spectacular about her. Whereas he's saying you actually do have a trait that you can really utilize to your advantage in a way that others can't. In a way that your
Almost
lauded
like her
siblings.
father trained her with it.
Smarter and more compassionate.
She self-deprecatingly says, well, that won't help me because dragons value strength and shrewdness, which, two thoughts here. So one, Kaori says for us, they choose for reasons that they don't see fit to share with us. So you can't just be saying this is why they choose people.
Correlation does not equal causation, Violet.
Also, like, there's more than one kind of strength. Like, literal physical strength is not the only kind of strength, and it's the only one that she seems capable of thinking about when she's thinking about dragons choosing people. Aside from her being her, like, intellectual strength, she's got this strength of being able to endure difficult and painful situations. Like, she's literally endured pain her whole life. And that is a huge mental strength that other people don't have. So I need her to give herself some credit here. Then we get to jump into our challenges on the mats scene.
Whew, here we go.
Okay. So I'm just going to run through what I noticed, and we can jump back and pick out details afterward.
Okay.
Okay, so she is so nervous that she wants to puke. She's watching Rhiannon demolish her opponent. Meanwhile, Dane is next to her being like, he's gonna try to kill you. And I'm like, what? This again about Mother Fork and Jack Barlow? No, actually, it's Xaden this time. He's glaring daggers while Xaden looks on, bored as usual. Except wait, no, it's not Xaden either. It's Orin this time. Because he overheard Orin discussing with his friends, which we pretty sure includes Barlow, about how Violet is a liability.
Yeah, that little group is giving me like Manosphere vibes.
Yeah, they're...
Oh, total manosphere.
Now, Violet's not the only one about to puke. Because despite all of his swagger and confidence, Orin also looks green. Violet is wearing her dragon scale vest and her fighting leathers, and she's got all 4 daggers sheathed. And this is where my notes have a weird typo in them. I don't know what that's trying to say. Something about a 5th dagger that is like ready for...
She's hoping that
Yeah,
she'll have one more to add.
She's got all 4 and she's ready for a 5th.
Yes.
Rhiannon knocks out her opponent and says, enjoy your nap. Violet laughs, we laugh.
And pats him on the head.
Yeah.
Jack sneers at her laughing before her presumed death, which he is anticipating. He says, I hope you win so that I can be the one to kill you, because violets are such delicate, fragile things, you know? We get some actual italics here of Violet thinking, repeating Xaden's words. He'd probably think twice about plotting your murder if you threw a few daggers at his head. So she does!
But not just the head on top of his neck.
So she flicks 2 daggers at either side of his head, just like she did to Xaden previously. So much for lying low, and Dane is furious. And so is Jack.
I find it so... Another reason why I get so irritable with Dane is that whenever he views her as disobeying him or going against what he wants, he's just immediately angry.
He is angry, and he's angry at her for defending herself.
Yes.
Like, it's not that she's, like, disobeying him necessarily. Like, that's part of it, but it's also... It's always in this context of, like, I wanted to protect you, my, you know, delicate, fragile little flower, and here you are, growing thorns out of your leaves instead.
Some of us rather be thorny.
Yeah, he's not really about empowering her. He's trying to, like, cover her up and keep her safe, which is not, like, what you do with humans. She points out to him that the lying low plan clearly wasn't working since everyone already wanted to kill her. Like, you can't really go back on that. And she needs to challenge her reputation as a liability instead of just accepting it. We get another scalp prickle.
Spidey sense!
Which I think we've agreed that this is basically anytime Xaden is reading her intentions.
I believe so.
So she looks at him, and she's got a stammering heart.
As if his shadows went straight through her ribs to squeeze the organ.
Good lord.
She catches a hint of a smile, as she frequently does when he's looking at her, and then as he goes to watch the 4th Wing Cadets at the next match. In contrast to Dane, Rhiannon is hyping up her dagger throwing, and Dane's just pouting about it. Like, stop encouraging her. Like, no, Dane, please encourage her. And now the real challenge begins. Who will puke first?
It's a puke-off.
Oh, good lord. Images I did not need in my mind.
Orin tells her not to take it personally that they think she's a liability and has to die. He says that his sister is a healer, so he's got the inside scoop that her bones snap like twigs.
And I wrote, is there no HIPAA in this world?
Clearly not.
Patient healer confidentiality.
I see this not only as like the usual insulting, but that he's posturing. He's trying to hype himself up because he's sweating and blinking off the nausea. So it's that, like, the bark is worse than the bite right now, but the bark is also his own, like, self-encouragement.
Mhm.
Violet taunts him to find out. He almost pukes and then catches himself. Violet bides her time and he charges first. She holds her ground until the very last second and dodges, nicks his side with a blade and kicks him in the back. We've got more italics. Now! Which is probably just her thinking to herself, but it reminds me of when she and Xaden have their little mental conversations later. So part of me wants to be like, it's Xaden already in her head saying no, but probably not. But this does go back to like
She doesn't tell us it sounds like his voice.
No,
She just says
no, no,
And
no.
she
now.
already
Yeah.
knows his voice like the back of her hand.
I mean, she does. That also comes up in my next chapter. So this is a non-poison related timing. This is a knocking someone over timing. She knees him in the spine like Imogen did to her and puts a blade to his throat. He refuses to yield as if he could do anything, but heaves again, pukes across the mat. He loses the puking challenge. And at this point, Professor Materio calls the match because clearly, like, he's not gonna get up from this. Violet does get that 5th dagger that he dropped, notes that it's heavier and longer than her other ones, and it goes in her thigh sheath,
Mm-hmm.
which I have a sticky note here that says, I want thigh knives.
I find it so funny that everybody is like so grossed out about him throwing up when I'm like, y'all are dying left and right. Like there's so much
Right?
blood and a viscera and it's like puke that you guys are like, no.
I don't know, like, I think it's silly, but I also kind of get it. Like, there's something about the texture and the quality of puke. Yes.
Yep.
And I also say this as someone who's like extremely desensitized to cat puke. Like Drew, if he sees puke, he like wants to gag. He'll like deal with it, but he's like
Puke
reacting
actually
the whole
really
time.
doesn't
And
bother me. You talking about texture put something weird in my head, but like I went through 2 pregnancies where I threw up like every other day almost. And so I'm just like, yeah.
But yet, like that smell when I
Sure.
smell someone else's stomach acid, especially in like an enclosed space like a room, oh, it's horrible.
I mean, there's
This
like
is why I will never raise children.
biological reasons for this, but
Sure.
because if you have no context, your brain's just trying to keep you safe. It's like, oh, people
Avoid.
around me are puking. We probably ate some similar things, so maybe I should do that too, just to be safe. That's one of the explanations.
Okay, if you want to be logical.
So that's the only poison strategy on the mat scene that we get to directly see, and then we get this kind of list of
Montage.
different, like the montage of poisonings, the poisoning montage, which is then where the epigraph's discussion of timing is extremely relevant because it's the trickiest part of her strategy, and it's the thing that she has to like really hone in. So she's got another match that she wins due to this is also where John gets all of his little poison plant field guide notes from.
Yep.
Hallucinogenic laurel mushrooms. That's another word that has Lee in it. I don't know if oral is Scottish, so we're just going to ignore that. She has another win when a Zinna root makes a guy's feet numb. And I was like, is that named after Zindal? That's pretty, like, almost exactly the same spelling.
It really is.
Good catch. Good catch.
I wonder why. Like, what's luck related about this root that makes your feet go numb?
Maybe it looks like similar enough to something else that it's like, well, you better be
Luck
lucky.
of the
You got
draw,
lucky.
like, yeah.
Yep.
Her timing on that one was a little bit off, and so he got in a few good punches that marked up her face. She had another win when Tarsila leaves affected an opponent's vision.
I buxom cadet's vision, so.
Yes. I feel like this buxom cadet comes up a few times, and we still never get their name.
But she's got
They're
great
just
tits.
She was probably one of the 30 that didn't make it. Or didn't get a dragon.
Mm. Yeah, probably. That one, also the timing wasn't quite right. Her opponent was still fast, was able to kick Violet's ribs hard enough that she considered going to see Naolin, but she continues seeing the need for healing as a weakness and not the injuries themselves.
Yep.
I wrote a 5th dagger here, but she already had her 5th dagger, so I don't know if that's...
No, it's her 5th earned dagger.
Oh, earn my 5th dagger.
Okay.
Yes,
So
okay.
the 5th dagger that she had was 5th total from Orin, and this is her 5th earned. Okay. This one's got a pretty ruby in it, which I thought was fun. She won that one by using carmine tree bark, which makes the opponent sluggish and ill, but it's too similar to the effects of the Fonnelly berries, so in order to make it seem less like a repeat poisoning type scenario that someone could catch on to, well, so sad. It infected the whole 3rd squad claw section of 3rd wing.
Cough,
It must
cough.
have just
be
been a
something
virus.
viral.
Yep. I love how she's the one that says, it must be something viral.
She starts to feel confident because of taking down those 5 challenges without killing anyone, which a whole quarter of the year can't say. Which, yeah, we don't get to see these killings on page very much. We just keep getting these references to them, which I feel like kind of takes the sting out of them a little bit. But also, like, how are so many people dying? They've got 20 more names on the death roll for first years alone that month.
Yeah. It's got to just be like a... I mean, they're getting their daggers out, so I'm sure that there
Yeah.
are, you know...
Like, yes, there's got to be injuries that occur on the mat, absolutely. I would presume that Jack Barlow is
A lot.
Snapping necks left and right.
for at least 4 or 5 of those names. But also, like, remember, the codex itself says it's not illegal to kill another rider on the challenge mat, and sometimes grudges are settled this way for a reason.
Yep.
It's just, it feels like such an ineffective way to run a military.
No one's questioning.
Cassie, there's only 100 dragons.
Yeah, but couldn't they just, like, take the rejects and stick them in infantry? Like,
yes, but
why does everyone have to die?
This is the cadets fighting amongst themselves to be one of the ones that a dragon will pick.
But it's not discouraged. It's not against the codex when, like, everything else is. Like, I just feel like if they cared, that they could, like, change the culture.
Yeah, I mean, but if they don't kill each other, the dragons might.
And here's where we learn that Cassie is not destined to be a dragon rider. She's destined to be a griffin flyer.
Surprise, surprise! I'm not murderous. Okay, she's got one more opponent who didn't make it to the mat. Rayma Corey. She is named unlike everyone else. On this one, Violet used raw Walwyn fruit peels in the pastry icing. And again, the timing was an issue. She must have served it too early because it had set in too much. Rayma couldn't walk straight and had to go to the healers. Violet thinks maybe this match is off. But someone offers to step in, and she gets that scalp prickle again.
Dun,
Turn the page,
dun.
and it's Xaden.
And I just wrote in all caps, I'm so jealous of John, because this is when I realized that the next chapter is sexy fighting time, and I'm just, It's so good. It's so good.
If it wasn't copyrighted, I feel like we need I won't say I'm in love from Hercules to start playing.
Yeah, what's the legally acceptable clip length
It's like
of audio?
10 seconds or something like that.
That's long enough to get I won't say I'm in love in there, right?
But will we have the da-do, da-do in the background?
Well, if it's in that section, yeah.
How long can I play copyrighted music? There's no specific time limit.
I just know that this comes up when we're watching Dropout shows all the time, because they're like, this is the legal limit of the amount we're allowed to play without getting sued. Or sometimes if someone is like singing a copyrighted song, they just like mute it and do like a scrolling message across the screen.
there's certain standards that like courts have pseudo adopted that aren't in the law, but the courts tend to treat them as the cutoffs.
It's a
And I
precedent,
remember this
basically.
because 10 years ago the precedent was about 10%. You were allowed to copy and produce 10% of material so long as it wasn't for the sole purpose of making money off of the materials. Like, if you're adding your own commentary, then you're making money off of your commentary, not the materials. But if it's for the purposes of just, like, this was important for, like, teachers, because if you wanted to show clips of certain TV shows or movies in classroom from your own copies, you were only allowed to show 10% of the total runtime. I don't know.
And that was John in the legal corner.
I was gonna say, I've got so many stupid facts hidden in my brain here, and this is all what I remember from my high school days, which is like saying something.
Well, this is a really long one. Where are we? We're at 2 hours and 42 minutes of recording time. So
this is gonna be a two-parter.
It's
gotta be a two-parter. There's no way around it.
What I think is really funny about this is we thought that the split was going to be between the class time and the mat time, and we had barely even gotten to the class time when we had to stop.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. There's just so much in this chapter.
Which is hilarious, because it's not going to get any easier from here.
No, but I feel like a lot of the chapters are shorter than this one, at least. So even if they do have a lot of information, it's a lot of information in fewer pages.
This is true.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we close out this mammoth of a recording?
I'm sorry, it has been quite a behemoth.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us today. We will see you all in the next chapter. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Wing Readers. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at The Wing Readers, or you can send us an email at thewingreaders@gmail.com. It would mean the world to us for you to subscribe and rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday. We'll see you in Chapter 9.